But speaking of another name, Craig was actually the icon on Discord was a bear. And speaking of another bear, not the Chicago Bears, but a teddy bear. Teddy Bridgewater has signed with the Detroit Lions. It's been a very interesting day with Detroit Lions Twitter as everyone got teased a big news and then was trying to figure out what it was. I did very weird day, but the news coming out initially here now from Ian Rappaport making it official that Teddy Bridgewater will be joining the Detroit Lions, getting signed to be quarterback 2 as Nate Sudfeld looks to be slipping down or maybe even off the roster, and Hendon Hooker remains not part of the roster right now because of his NFI PUP designation. So Teddy Bridgewater is in. He's quarterback 2, and I feel like, Jeremy, we should just give the floor to Ryan Matthews here to start us out.
Sure.
Because this has been someone that Ryan's been high on for a while. I will not deny him his flowers. Ryan, you were right. You were always right, and the Lions saw the wisdom of your ways.
Yeah, I know. Where's my... I'm expecting a phone call within the next 24 hours, I guess, giving me a job in the front office. No, stop. Here's what I think the signing of Teddy Bridgewater does prove. Having a backup quarterback in this league is oftentimes considered a luxury, right? Because I think that you look around the league, there aren't 32 quarterbacks that are worthy of starting for an NFL franchise. And when you have a backup quarterback, it's this idea that it's a luxury, right? The Lions are no longer a team that can afford their starting quarterback to miss a substantial amount of time or even a little bit of time. They can't afford to take their foot off the gas. And Teddy Bridgewater helps them keep things steady. And he can, this is a move that signifies the Lions are building a winning organization. Because, again, we talked about it in the segment 1, that is not segment 2. You're
teasing something that they haven't heard yet.
They have contingency plans in place, and maybe the one position that you need a contingency plan in place that you feel comfortable about is having a backup quarterback who I think Teddy Bridgewater is more than a guy who can, prevent the boat from rocking. I think he's a guy who can keep the ship moving, and there's plenty of things to like about him, Jeremy. I mean, familiarity with Dan Campbell from his time in New Orleans, and that season he had in 2019 when he kept the Saints running right along. Early on in the season, Drew Brees goes down, Teddy Bridgewater is a starter, 5-0 record.
QB wins, baby.
QB wins matter right now. Okay. I think the important thing though is that with Bridgewater, they have a guy who has done it in the NFL. Coming into this season, I mean, if QB wins don't matter, I think QB passing attempts matter. Nate Sudfeld had 37 passing attempts in his career.
Yeah.
Coming into this NFL season, a whole hell of a lot more for Teddy Bridgewater, and he has the experience, he has the ability. I think that this is just a sign of a team that is no longer thinking in luxuries. They are thinking of making moves to help them become a winning organization, which is what the hype is all about, right? Are the Lions turning a corner?
Right.
I think that this is another indication that they're in win now mode, Jeremy.
Yeah, and I mean we don't need to beat around the bush. Like, now the Lions have one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league, right? Like, I'm not saying Teddy Bridgewater is amazing. I'm not saying he should be starting. I'm not saying he's going to challenge Jared Goff for a starting job. But when it comes, I mean, you said it. There are not 32 capable starting quarterbacks in this league, and Teddy Bridgewater is right in that next level of guys that might not be a starter anymore, but he's up there. And so, yeah, I mean, everything you said, Dan Campbell said too, right? He was asked about the interest in Teddy Bridgewater a couple weeks ago, started training camp. He basically said, like, if we can sign him, we're going to sign him. Like, it's very clear to me that this ball has been in Teddy Bridgewater's court for a long time, so it's no surprise that it actually got done. We still don't know the contract terms yet, which I'm kind of fascinated to see, because how much of an investment is this? How much is this team willing to bet on the current organization, right? Because you have to imagine it's probably a 1-year deal. Maybe it's a 2-year deal, but with Hendon Hooker waiting in the wings, it's probably just a 1-year deal. So how much money are they willing to spend in an insurance policy that this team is going to make the playoffs even if Jared Goff gets hurt? How important is that to this organization? Because that's what this is. Dan Campbell said it himself. He said, like, listen, it's year 3 of this organization now. We're in a position where to compete, and we don't want this ship to sink with an injury. And so now Teddy Bridgewater has it that way. And I agree with you. He's not just necessarily a guy who's like, you throw him in there and he's just going to do the game plan. Like, no, he can provide a little bit more than that. And so I'm with you. Like, I know I've said in the past that I really like Nate Sudfeld and I thought he's been playing well. I do. And I still do think all of those things. I am interested in seeing how much they are investing in this backup position because I don't know. Like, to me, there is part of me that's always been like, if your quarterback's out, you're kind of screwed. But Bridgewater brings a little bit more than that, so that maybe you aren't particularly screwed. I don't think they win a Super Bowl with Teddy Bridgewater, but they definitely still win the division, in my opinion, even if they have to rely on Bridgewater for like 10 plus games.
We have talked a lot about how much this offense is being set up by Ben Johnson. And a lot of it is, yes, to make Jared Goff comfortable and give weapons that fit to Jared Goff. But I also believe that the Detroit Lions right now, they're not set up like the 49ers were in past years where you could just kind of put any quarterback in there and you'll succeed the next way. But I think if, God forbid, Jared Goff did get hurt, I don't think the drop down to Teddy Bridgewater is a cliff. I think Teddy Bridgewater could absolutely work with the same weapons, the same offensive line, the same play calling that Ben Johnson has set up and succeed. Again, maybe not at a Jared Goff level, but to Jeremy's point, it would keep the ship afloat. Teddy Bridgewater, I think we call him a QB2, but with all the live reps, all of the chances, because a lot of the places he's gone in his career, he has been forced to, in spite of being a quarterback too, he's had to start because of injuries at some point, be it New Orleans. I think he started Carolina, if I'm correct, Ryan. He definitely started with Miami. He started in Miami when Tua went down. I believe he had some time in Denver as well. Like, he has shown himself to be adaptable to offenses wherever he goes, and he's seen live fire drills with those teams in regular season games when it matters, and he's never shrunk away from those opportunities when they come up. He's never really rocked the boat and taken that starting job, but at the same time, we've seen a lot of backup quarterbacks who go to, as you say, in past years, they'll go in there and they'll just play they'll underperform. You'll get like a Tim Boyle performance or something. I'm not going to expect, and I am not going to anticipate a Tim Boyle performance from Teddy Bridgewater. I believe he has had the seasoning and he has the live experience to succeed if he is called upon. And again, to Jeremy's point, when you are the Detroit Lions, when you have, and we'll get to this in what was segment 1, now segment 2, the anticipations put upon your shoulders, Teddy Bridgewater helps make sure you're going to deliver on them in spite of any potential roadblocks that might happen.
I think two things that this really signals to me is, one, they don't feel comfortable saying that Nate Sudfeld is that guy, right? If they felt comfortable in Nate Sudfeld being QB2, Teddy Bridgewater wouldn't be here. I think the other thing too is that this, I don't want to speak out of turn, Jeremy, but I feel like this formally lets everybody know that this is going to be a red shirt season for Hendon Hooker.
Yes.
Right? I think this almost puts it in pen, right? The quote that I love, okay, because we can talk about, maybe if Teddy Bridgewater has to come in due to a Jared Goff injury, maybe he has to step in, he has to perform. But it goes beyond that, because there's a quote from Dan Campbell, if you guys remember, in the 2021 season when the Lions were playing the Denver Broncos and Teddy Bridgewater was at quarterback and the Lions roster was absolutely ravaged by COVID. Campbell said in the lead up to that game, he said, I've got a lot of respect for Teddy Bridgewater because I think he's a winner in this league. But it's the stuff that doesn't happen on game days, right? And there's a lot of talk about, hey, Nate Sudfeld was a really good guy in the quarterback room. Dan Campbell said he was Teddy Bridgewater was a guy that on Saturdays he would pull all the young guys out, and he would take all the young guys, all the practice squad guys, any of the backups, and he would take them out and go through the whole game plan with them and run the routes and talk them through and talk them, tell them what he wanted. Like, he was an ultra competitive guy, Dan Campbell said, on the practice squad, and he would frustrate the hell out of the first team defense because he's a guy who is just, he's ready. He knows what it takes in this league. He's a former first round draft pick. He's a guy who was a starter, everybody should know, for the Minnesota Vikings until he almost died from a gruesome leg injury. I mean, this is a guy who
he was fantastically hyped coming out of college as well. He had all the physical tools and the mind to succeed in this league. It just took a freak accident to really knock him off the pedestal. That's all it took.
And I think it's a testament to his perseverance and to his will to stay in the NFL, to say, hey, I'm not done with my life with football because of this injury. I'm going to accept whatever role I can take. I love that Teddy Bridgewater is the backup quarterback for the Detroit Lions, because if Jeremy wants to poke fun at it, it's fine. But Dan Campbell, he's a winner, right? He's a guy who helps your team buy into that winning culture.
Yeah. Well, to me, one underrated aspect of this is he's such a professional. Like,
yes.
what better guy to kind of help mold Hendon Hooker, right? Like, Jared Goff isn't going to be able to sit around and help Hendon Hooker at every stage of his development this year, right? He's got to plan for his own stuff. Now you've got Teddy Bridgewater, who's going to be an amazing resource for Hendon Hooker. And
everything.
Say what you will about Hendon Hooker and where his future lies, like, his ceiling just rise, in my opinion, because he has Teddy Bridgewater, a guy who has succeeded in a lot of ways in this NFL because of the way he carries himself, because of his perseverance, because of his winning attitude. All of those things are now, not that Hendon Hooker needs all that sort of stuff. Like, he's a pretty big professional himself. You know, he comes at a more mature age, all that sort of stuff. But now you have a mentor right there in the building who can spend that time with you and help you guide through everything that in an NFL rookie season, all those trials and tribulations. You have that guy right there in your room now. Like, that's important.
I think that, you're talking also about the work ethic, and you mentioned that, Ryan, and we've seen those quotes about Hendon Hooker, about how involved he is in everything too. So yeah, I think if you want to talk about a guy on the sideline who's going to be helping out Hendon Hooker, I don't think there's a better guy than Teddy Bridgewater, who has gone through maybe not the same troubles that Hendon Hooker has gone through so far, but understands like the work that comes putting in, the work to find your place in the league. Someone who understands to be adaptable, to be malleable, to be ready for game day. That is, I can't think of a better mentor to have than Teddy Bridgewater right now.
Go ahead.
Well, the only thing I wanted to say was that I know that there's going to be much made of seemingly nothing, right? Because it's a backup quarterback who's signing in August, and it seems like it's a big nothing burger, but it truly isn't, because he was one of the last coveted free agents when it came to quarterbacks who actually moves the needle, right? And not only, like I said, moves the needle on game day if you need him, but moves the needle of the organization, and it points it in a direction trending up.
I've got 2 points I want to make. One is how this will already be valuable in training camp, because I'm not trying to crap on the kid, but Adrian Martinez has not been good in training camp. He's a rookie. He's undrafted. It's very much clear when you see him play why both those things are true. He's going to help raise the floor of every practice now, right? Like, because now you're going to have a capable quarterback in Nate Sudfeld throwing with the third team, or maybe it's with the second team. Dan Campbell did say, if we make this move, there's going to be a battle. You can believe that or not, whatever. Of course he's going to say that too, especially when they hadn't made the move yet. But either way, practice is now going to be a little bit more competitive. And then my second point here is, like, now we have to bring up the conversation of keeping 3 quarterbacks. There is a new rule out there, right? If you have 3 quarterbacks, you can have that extra emergency quarterback on game days. And listen, like, maybe this team is too good to keep 3, and maybe you have Hendon Hooker as that kind of bona fide third, even though he'll probably start the season on the NFI list for the first 4 weeks now. But it's something that they're going to have to consider now. It's going to be part of the equation where it wasn't before, because Adrian Martinez was not going to make this team. Now you can make the argument for keeping 3. I don't know that they will. I kind of doubt it. Like, if I had to choose right now, I don't think they're going to do it, but it's part of the equation now, and it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Well, let me kick it right back to you, Jeremy. Do you think if they carry 3, now who's on the out? Is it Nate Sudfeld or is it Adrian Martinez?
No, it has to be Adrian Martinez. Like, you have your developmental quarterback in Hendon Hooker. You can't sit and wait for 2 quarterbacks to develop while keeping one on the roster. Like, I'm telling you, like, Nate Sudfeld isn't a horrible quarterback. He's not a disgusting human being. Like, he's fine.
No, but I remember even when he was playing in college, this wasn't a very highly touted prospect either at any point, and he spent a long time in college as well.
But he's got a year in the system now. Like, he was thrown in. Like, Teddy Bridgewater's going to get thrown to the wolves a little bit, but not even close to the level in which Nate Sudfeld was, because Bridgewater probably knows this system, and he'll have at least a couple training camp days and maybe a preseason game or 2 to play in. But I don't know. I do think people sleep on Nate Sudfeld a little bit, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you this wasn't a good move and that Nate Sudfeld's going to win this backup job. Like, no, it's Teddy's job. I don't think he's going to lose it. The question is just whether you need a 3rd string out there. And maybe they value Nate Sudfeld enough as kind of that soundboard guy, the clipboard holder, the guy in the room that has had a year under Ben Johnson specifically that needs to be in Jared Goff's year. Maybe that's enough for them to want him as a 3rd quarterback. Maybe you can sneak him on the practice squad. I don't know. But I think all of those are conversations that are now going to happen now that Teddy's in the building.
Anything else to add, Ryan? Do you see when we look at QB3, who is it right now? Do you agree with him? Is it Nate Sudfeld, or do you still think maybe they might try to develop Adrian Martinez?
Like Jeremy said, they have their developmental prospect in Hendon Hooker. I just want to remind everybody that we had the quote from Bridgewater in 2021 where he said, when Dan Campbell got up in front of everybody, you were ready to storm out of that meeting and punch a guy in the face for no reason. Like, Teddy Bridgewater, another Dan Campbell guy here in Detroit. And
that's right.
To Jeremy's point, it's going to be a competition. Nothing's set in stone. I have a feeling, though, that Teddy Bridgewater would win that competition. But I don't think Teddy's coming here thinking like it's just in the bag. And I don't think Dan Campbell would ever give that impression. So, and he hasn't to this point, but I do think he has a leg up, and I feel better about the Lions quarterback room than I did 2 hours ago. I
don't think Dan Campbell would sign Teddy Bridgewater if he just assumed he was going to walk into the building and with the backup job, right? That's not something that Dan Campbell would appreciate, and that's not something that Teddy Bridgewater, I think, would do.